In today's story, we are going to find out what does it take to get into the kingdom of heaven. So this story starts off with Jesus and a bunch of little children. People have brought these children to Jesus so that he can lay his hands on them. And the disciples see this and they say, excuse me, why are you bringing all these little children to Jesus? Jesus is busy. He has a lot to do. He does not have time to be laying hands on all of your children. And Jesus rebukes the disciples and he says, excuse me, no, the kingdom of heaven actually belongs to the little children. And Jesus places his hands on the little children and then he moves on from there. And as Jesus goes along, there's a rich young man who comes to Jesus with a question. Now, this is a young man who's very wealthy, rich, he's a ruler, has all of the things going for him. And he comes to Jesus and he says, Jesus, I would really like to get to the kingdom of heaven, and what do I need to do? And Jesus says, why are you talking to me about what is good? Nobody is good except for God alone. And besides, haven't you read the law and the 10 Commandments? Don't you know what those are? You need to follow them, obviously. And the rich young man says, could you just clarify, which ones specifically do I need to follow? And Jesus says, you know the ones. You should not murder anybody. You should not steal anything. You should not lie. And you should honor your parents. And the rich young man says, no problem. All of these I have followed ever since I was a child. No problem. What else do I need to do? Surely there's something, maybe one big thing that I need to do in order to get into the kingdom of heaven that will prove that I am worth it. I have a lot of money. I could definitely do something big. And Jesus says, okay, here is what you should do. If you really want to be perfect, this is the thing. I want you to go home, and I want you to sell all of your possessions, and I want you to give all of that money to the poor. And then I want you to come after me, and I want you to follow me, and you will have treasure in heaven. And the rich young man turns away, and he is so sad, and he just goes home because he was so wealthy. And he did not want to give up all of his stuff. And Jesus watches him go away and he says to his disciples, you know what? It is really hard for somebody who is rich to get into the kingdom of heaven. You know what's easier than a rich person getting into the kingdom of heaven? Is a camel. I know this doesn't really look like a camel, but let's pretend this is a camel. It would be easier, Jesus said, for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of heaven. And the disciples say, that doesn't make any sense. That guy had so much money and he was giving money to cure cancer and he was doing all these good things and he would have helped build the temple. If anybody is going to be able to do something useful in the world who deserves to be in the kingdom of heaven, it was that rich young man. And if he can't be in the kingdom of heaven, then who can be in the kingdom of heaven? And Jesus says to his disciples, yes, it is actually impossible for people to get into the kingdom of heaven by doing good works and giving a lot of money and being the right person and blah, blah, blah. And in fact, the only way is to trust in God, and God will get you into the kingdom of heaven. And Peter steps out and he says, Jesus, we have left everything for you. So if we have left everything for you, what is there going to be for us? We have nothing left to give. And Jesus says, you know what? In the end, when all things are made new, the 12 of you who have followed me, you are all going to sit on 12 thrones, and you are going to judge the tribes of Israel with me. And all of you who have left your fathers or your mothers or your brothers or anything for my name's sake, you will receive so much more than that, and you will also receive eternal life. But you know what? There's going to be some people who are first, and they're actually going to be the very last. And there's going to be some people who were the last, and they are going to be the very first. And Jesus says, you know what? This is what the kingdom of heaven is like. It's like a man who owns a lot of land. These are his rows of wheat or produce or carrots or whatever that he's growing. And he goes into the marketplace and he sees some people standing around. And he says, hey, would you like to come work in my vineyard? And so they say, yes, we would love to. And so they go and they agree to work for a denarius. And then a little while later, the landowner goes out and he sees some more people still hanging out in the marketplace waiting for somebody to hire them. And he says, hey, would you like to work in my vineyard? And they say, yes, we would love to. We will work for a denarius. And so they also go into the vineyard. And the landowner keeps doing this. He goes out into the marketplace and he sees people standing around and he offers them a job until there's a bunch of different people working in his vineyard, and they have all agreed to work for a denarius. And then at the very final hour of the day, he goes out and he sees still more people standing in the marketplace. And he says, "Excuse me, what are you doing here? Why are you just standing around doing nothing?" And they say, "Well, nobody has hired us all day long. We've been trying to get a job." And he says, "Okay, you also go and work in my vineyard and I will give you whatever is right." And so they do. And when the time comes for the workers to receive their wages, he calls them all and he says to his steward, "Okay, here's the money, and I just want you to pay each person what they deserve for the day's work, and start with the people who were hired most recently, and then go back down the line, and at the very end, pay the people that I hired very first thing in the morning." And so that is what the steward does. He starts with the very last people who were hired, and he gives them a denarius, which is what they agreed to work for. And he goes down the line, and he gives everybody a denarius. And then finally, at the end, the people who'd been working all day long, it comes to be their turn, and he gives them a denarius. And they say, "Excuse me, why are you only giving us one denarius? That's the same thing that you gave to the people who started way later in the day. But we were out there working all day long, and we worked in the heat of the day, and we worked really hard for you. And we deserve more than those people who were hired at the very end. Like, they just worked a tiny little bit, and they do not deserve the same that we got." And the landowner says, "I paid you what you agreed to. You agreed to work for a denarius, and that is what you got. And why are you complaining about what I give to the other people? I gave to each person what I thought was right, and that is my decision what to do with my money. So why are you making a big deal about it? If I want to be generous with my money, that is my problem." And Jesus says this is what it's like in the kingdom of heaven, when the last are first and the first are last. I think this story is really interesting, and as I am telling it to you today, it's just reminding me that it doesn't matter how much we have to give to God. What God is asking of us is that we give him everything that we have. So we might have a little, and we should give him all of that. And we might have a lot, and we should give him all of that. And in the end, as long as we have given him everything, we will receive the reward that he has for us. That is what I am learning from this story today, but just because that's what I learned doesn't mean it's the only thing that can be learned from this story. I would love to hear what you guys are learning. Please post in the comments below and we can continue the discussion there. And I will see you in the next video.